Hi, it's Gab Dad. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Enough. And we're here with our...
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
We're here for our best of 2010. The year is coming to a close. And Gab and Dad have seen over 50, well, we've reviewed, the channel, Gab and Dad, have reviewed over 50 movies this year. And we've actually seen more than that. We don't always get to review a movie that we've seen.
We sometimes go to movies separately, too.
Yeah, so we've seen a lot more. And so I think that
I've seen about 800 movies.
That's very impressive. You need to another hobby. We feel that we're qualified to have best picks of the year.
Yes.
We each have picked our 3 top of the year, and we'd like to reveal those to you. Do you want to start?
What are we going to do? Start with the bottom of the like
start
number 3?
Yeah.
All right. My third pick, my third best film for 2010.
We haven't discussed
it, is The Fighter.
Ooh.
Which we reviewed, which was marked by excellent ensemble acting, and particularly an outstanding performance by Christian Bale.
Awesome.
And it's just generally an interesting, fairly complex, entertaining story. So I would give that number 3.
Well, that is my number 3 as well.
Aha.
The Fighter.
Good choice.
Thank you. You have good taste, right? As you say, a wonderful ensemble cast. It's really a drama about a family. Primarily to me, which was a surprise for a boxing film, and I appreciated that aspect.
There's always been a lot of
much.
boxing in our family.
Well, the boxing is very familial as well, and that part of the story, it was just an interesting character study, and Christian Bale's performance, particularly his character, was just magnetic to me, comedic, tragic, and really interesting, just all around great quality film in many categories. A definite keeper of the year.
Yes. Right, so that's...
So we agree. We're tied number 3 on The Fighter.
My number 2 is Inception.
Aha!
A complicated story, a very interesting story, I thought, all around. A very entertaining film. Perhaps not marked so much by exceptional acting, but just a very interesting, well-produced and well-directed film.
I would agree with that, definitely. I loved Inception, and again, it's one of those movies that delivers on many levels, in many categories, which I think when I'm picking my best films of a year, I want them to sort of hit the mark in several categories. It's not just the most beautiful film of the year or what have you, or not just the best acted film of the year, although I think the acting was, Leonardo DiCaprio really carried it. He's very believable with action. He's very believable with dramatic sort of angst. And this film the story had all those elements to it.
Interestingly enough, Leonardo DiCaprio, as you know, has starred in 2 recent films with striking similarities. Mm-hmm. Inception and then Shutter Island before that.
Yeah, that was another good film this year.
It was a good film. Yeah. Shutter Island is another one of those films about what is real, what is not real, what are you imagining. And that is the basis of Inception. But
yeah, Inception delivers so much more for me because of its visual effects and all the sort of psychological levels and philosophical levels of reality versus non-reality.
By the way, I have 2 honorable mentions later on. We can have that, right? Honorable mentions?
I guess we do now.
I guess we do.
So good, excellent choice. Inception is your number 2. My number 2, again, interestingly, reality versus non-reality, a big theme, Black Swan.
I can't agree with that.
Well, obviously you don't, because you didn't pick it as your number 2.
Why Black Swan?
Again, when I look back on the films of a year, it's really about like which films stuck with me and on several levels, and I just can't shake Black Swan. It just really got into my brain. I think it was very impressively performed, directed, a lot of very bold choices, as you say,
true.
And I agreed, not all necessarily successful, but I have to give it tremendous credit as a film goer, as a film lover, for everything that it was attempting to do and the things that it did pull off.
Yeah, a very courageous film by Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah.
Yes. I looked at our review that we did recently again, and I think in it I called the film a failure, but a magnificent failure.
Yes, and some people
I would stick with
some
that.
viewers didn't quite understand that concept, although I think it's a fitting explanation for it, because Well, it's a controversial film, and obviously you don't agree with my choice of it, but
it's a good film.
It has
It's definitely
a lot to offer. I want to see it again, which that is always a hallmark of a challenging and good film. If you want to see it again, I saw Inception twice in the theater, which is unusual for me. And great performance, Natalie Portman, just riveting performance.
Yes,
and,
an exceptional performance.
Visually, a lot going for it, and it's really when I look back on this year, it really sticks out to me. Plus, we saw it at the film festival, which is a nice little touch for us. So we've passed 3 and 2.
So you want my number 1?
Of course. Actually, nah, I'm not interested.
Well, my number 1 choice, and I'm almost in a sense reluctant to pick this as number 1, but nonetheless, my number 1 choice.
You're reluctant to pick this one or
the one I'm about to pick.
Okay.
And it's Social Network.
Aha.
Which has a number of things going for it, as you say, to be number 1 or even be on our shortlist. Just being good in one area is not sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great story. Of course, it's based on a true story, but it's a great story. There is excellent acting, particularly by the person whose name I can't remember, who plays Zuckerberg.
Jesse Eisenberg.
Jesse Eisenberg. Excellent, riveting performance, I think. Completely convincing. Completely convincing portrayal of a complex character. Not just a scumbag, the way some people have approached it, but I think a complex, interesting character.
Very grey area.
Very grey area.
Those are the best kind.
Brilliantly directed. I mean, it carries you along wonderfully, great momentum. And in some ways an important film about an important phenomenon that says a lot about culture and society today.
Yeah, very timely.
So I think it scores very highly in just about every category.
Right.
It transcends, I think, Inception and The Fighter in terms of importance and overall merit. And it's my, as I say...
Content-wise.
Content-wise.
Right.
And so I would pick it as number 1. And
Interesting.
I think a lot of people have picked it as number 1.
Yes, a lot of critics groups' year-end wrap-ups have agreed with you.
And I'll go out on a limb right now and say this is going to be Best Film Oscar.
Oscar, it's certainly in the front running right now, and I can't disagree with anything.
It's getting a little hot.
It's getting hot in here. Well, that's because we don't always agree. It always heats up on Gab Dad. I do agree with everything you said about Social Network. And also, I don't think you mentioned the script. I mean, particularly the dialogue in the script.
Very good.
Is just so
very
tight and entertaining. And the film entertained me. What I have to say about the film and why it's not in my top 3 is that I haven't given it a second thought since. I really haven't. And when I've heard,
so it's a second thought test.
In a way, yes, it hasn't stuck with me, and maybe that's partially the sort of topicalness of it, where it's like, oh, that was interesting. It was a good film for this year, as you say, very relevant. But am I going to look back on it as one of those those films that really
it might not have a timeless quality to it. It might be a film that's in 2 or 3 or 5 years will seem hopelessly dated and of no interest at all.
So you gave it credit for its timeliness, and for me, that's almost a detraction. Whereas something like Inception or Black Swan, I can
like
revisit
Miracle on 34th Street that we'll all be, we're not all going to be watching it 50 years from now.
I don't think so. So even though it was very quality, again, in many of those categories, it doesn't have that stay with me quality for me, and that's why I didn't make it into my top 3.
I think that's very valid.
Well, thank you, Dad. And so, speaking of valid, we come to my number 1.
Whoops,
I think you meant to press the drum roll button.
That's
Thank you.
about it.
Somebody got a new toy for Christmas, can you tell? My number 1 pick, and it's already been mentioned, my number 1 is Inception. That film for me this year...
Wait a minute, what was your number 2?
Black Swan.
Black Swan, okay. Fighter, Black Swan.
I keep up. We only talking about 3. It's not that hard. Can we show a little respect for my number 1 pick? But we have already discussed it. I just have to reiterate that Inception for me, since I saw it in the summer, that has been the stick with me factor for this movie year. I saw it twice in the theater, which, as I said, is unusual for me because I just had to have that experience again. And it just always brings something to the table for me every time I think about it.
You've seen it twice.
I did. Oh. So I just think it delivered for me on every level. It was just such a great, entertaining film and thought-provoking. And to me, you can't beat that combination. If you can deliver on both those counts, you can't get better than that.
I want to mention, I want to give 2 honorable mentions. Films that I saw this past, films that I saw this past year that I thought were excellent and kind of flew under the radar. One was The Smile in Their Eyes,
Okay.
which is a South American film.
Mm-hmm.
A wonderful story, superb acting, see it if you can. And the second was The American with George Clooney,
Oh, okay.
which again was here for about a week and then disappeared.
Yeah.
On the whole, did not get very good reviews, but I found had a strange and haunting quality to it.
Okay.
And it's also shot in the most magnificent part of Italy. So those are two films, not in the top 3 or even perhaps the top 10, but are worth seeing if you get the opportunity.
I haven't seen those. And mentioning a top 10, we each have a top 10, which if you'd like to, if you're interested in our full top 10 list, please check out Gab and Dad on Twitter, where we'll post our
You
top
might find
10.
some surprising choices.
You might. I'll give an honorable mention since you did. It's only fair. I had a lot of trouble with my number 3 slot, and I batted about 127 hours. Was close in
I haven't
there.
seen that.
And I think The Town I almost wanted to put in there.
The Town
as
it was
well.
my top 10 list.
The Town and The Fighter are very similar to me, so that was a bit tough. But I don't really like Ben Affleck, so I know. Anyway, so if you want to see our top 10, Gab and Dad on Twitter. Also check out Gab and Dad's famous, everyone loves it, worst picks of the year.
Yes,
We
right.
always have fun with that, and also Max's top picks of the year.
And now we have to go, but take a look at our worst films
Thanks
of
for watching.
2010.